Hi everyone, welcome to my final presentation. I first want to start off by apologizing for my face and voice, but as you all know, it is that time of month where finals are all hitting us hard. So, you should be maintaining a healthy diet, getting enough sleep, and managing your stress in a healthy way. So that is what I'm doing. A little self care is not going to stop me from my final presentation. So, as we continue on, my final presentation is about what are cities, because this was the subject topic that interested me most in the whole semester. So, let's get started. What is a city? So, according to Google, a city is a densely populated human settlement characterized by high concentration of buildings, infrastructure, and a complex social structure, typically serving as the center of trade, commerce, and culture. In simple terms, a city is a human settlement of substantial size. A quote from the professor is usually when you think of a city, you think of the physical landscapes. I know I do. Like when I think of New York City, I think of the Statue of Liberty, or when I think of Detroit, I think of the GMC buildings, or when I think of Paris, I think of the Eiffel Tower. So, what are some physical landscapes of cities? A city's parts, or urban areas, include various functional zones like residential neighborhoods, commercial districts, industrial areas, and public spaces. All are connected by the infrastructure like roads and transportation system and utilities. So I just listed a few definitions in case we aren't 100% sure on the specific definitions for the city's parts. So residential areas include neighborhoods, apartments, and other housing types. Commercial districts are retail, including shopping malls, downtown areas, and business parks, usually places with money. Industrial areas is where like the manufacturing is, the factories, the industrial activities that take place are often located on the outskirts of the cities. The public spaces, including parks, plazas, squares, are in areas for public gathering, like parties or just coming together as a community. The suburbs are the areas surrounding the cities, often characterized as residential housing. And downtown or city centers are the central of the city, often containing important office buildings or businesses or government offices. In the outskirts, of which are the areas around the edge of the city, often transitioning into rural areas. So, I just wanted to start off by doing a little activity that is kind of a visual system type. So, what I want you to do is look at these images of the city and try to picture, or maybe even say out loud, what first comes up into your mind. So, for example, when I think of cities, I think of like big, populatedly high dense cities such as Rio de Janeiro, Dubai, and Tokyo. So, Rio de Janeiro, I've always been a huge fan of just because of the movie. But when I think of Rio, I think of immediately the cultural aspects such as carnival and football and their housing that is often, excuse me, videoized in a lot of movies and TV shows where their housing is very like compact and stacked on top of each other to ensure the most comfortable spacing for everyone who lives in the city, making sure everyone has a roof under their or over their head. So another city that comes to mind is Dubai, and I have a couple of friends that are from Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and she had told me that in Dubai you can leave a Birkin slipper on the floor, like in any shopping mall or in any public area, and it will not get stolen. Which obviously in America, if you were to leave anything that is over $100 or anything that anybody knows is counted as high end money, would probably not be there when you would return. But she says that because there are so many wealthy individuals, they don't need to steal, and it's actually a very super safe place to be. It's very low in crime rate. So when I think of Dubai, I think of wealth, I think of these magnificent buildings and the beautiful desert that surrounds it. Now, the third image is Tokyo, Japan, and I actually have a friend who's a model. I've never visited any of these places, just the kudos. But I actually have a friend who is a model, and he has gone to Tokyo and he has told me all about it. And he was mostly impressed by how clean the city was, which came as a huge shock to me because it is such a highly dense populated area. You would not expect it to be clean because New York, for example, New York City is not clean and Paris, France is not clean. And they have rats and bugs and all these different organisms that surround, like, are in the city, and people immediately think it's gross. So I was very shocked to hear that the city is surprisingly really clean. Um, but there's so much history and culture in each individual city that just makes it absolutely unique and beautiful, in my opinion. So, who builds cities? When you think about a city, you think about who made them. Like, for example, who made New York City? And these are all quotes from our lovely professor. And another quote that I liked is, you think about the people who made these spaces, like Beyonce in Houston or Taylor in Tennessee. So I've never heard about Beyonce in Houston. I don't know if it's because I come from California that I just immediately assume that all pop stars and movie stars like live in LA. Um, but Taylor Swift, I definitely knew was from Nashville because I was an old Tay Tay fan. I am currently not a new Tay Tay fan. I am definitely a fan of the older country that she produced rather than the nowadays hip hop fangirl club type. Anyways, but cities are built by wealthy individuals who can invest in a very real and meaningful way. Also, another quote by our professor. History is what makes the city, but money is what builds the environment and culture. So, who inhabits cities? Communities or neighborhoods are designed for the wealthy in mind, not for the poor. But what would it look like if it was designed for the poor? This is like a huge question that makes us wander and ponder all of these different aspects of who built cities, who inhabits cities, what are cities, that we try to connect and find the dots of. And I just loved this question and how broad it was, so I had to include it in my final project. So the state has the opportunity to evict certain people to control the type of community and environment that they want in their neighborhood. The state can raise the rent prices, making it impossible to pay rent and forcing people to move into a neighborhood that they can afford. And this goes into our new subject topic of the week, which is housing discrimination. This was the first time I had ever heard about housing discrimination, but I blame that on the fact that I have been born and raised in a very secluded small town, so I was not introduced to any of these diverse topics at all until moving to the city of Detroit, which I fell in love with, by the way, just because of all the different people and the cultural aspects. So, in conclusion, which this is also a piece from one of the modules that I really liked because it kind of incorporates what we immediately think about when we think about cities, which is the monuments, really. So the Eiffel Tower was never meant to be a permanent structure, but it is now the defining landmark for most of the people in Paris. The New York skyline defines New York City to many, but how does that differ from Motor City that it is no longer the world of auto production? Cities rise and falls, but the names stay the same. Is it laziness on us or understanding that it's the natural way for them? People will live in cities in increasing numbers. The world is inexorably becoming urban. By 2030, all developing regions, including Asia and Africa, will have more people living in urban than rural areas. And in the next 20 years, Homo sapiens, the wise human, will become Homo sapien urbanus in virtually all regions of the planet. Basically, meaning that we will tend to live in a highly dense populated city just based off of the name and the history that resonates within that. names. So, for example, I took an Afro-American and Latin history class, and that really dove deep into the actual culture and history of New York City and the Bronx and Brooklyn and Long Island and all of those different cities that are within that big city. So, a lot of immigrants from Puerto Rico came over to New York City, and that's where they formed their housing and living and culture and their environment, everything. And I actually did a project on hip hop and the history that formed around it, and it was very, very fascinating, and I loved it, and I loved it, and I loved it. So, in conclusion, the world is controlled by money, which we already knew, but these are my works cited. All of this information that I got was based off of our modules and YouTube videos that our lovely professor um, did for us. I super enjoyed the videos and they were very easy to follow and take notes with. And that is it. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.